Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Moody Talk on guilt. So, guilt, let's get into it. A lot of people don't ever really want to feel guilt, and a lot of people have a misunderstanding of the difference between shame and guilt. Okay, and I'm going to get to that. But what I want to talk about first is that guilt is a valid emotion. Okay, all of our emotions, whether they be the positive emotions or the more negative emotions, they are all valid emotions, and we have a right to feel them. And sometimes we have a need to feel them, even though don't want to actually feel them. And that's the case with guilt. Okay, so why is guilt valid? Well, guilt is that emotion that helps us to recognize when we are going against our own values, right? Our own ideals. And this is why it is important that guilt is one of those emotions that we have, because throughout our lives, we are going to make decisions that may negatively impact a situation, another person, ourselves, and we learn from those situations, right? We learn through emotions, and in this case, we learn through guilt. If we've done something that may have hurt someone or, upset some sort of situation, some event in our lives, and we made a choice for that to happen, our emotion of guilt is going to recognize that, and we're going to feel the guilt. Okay. So now the difference between guilt and shame, and I know this can be a hard one to recognize, but guilt is when we go against our own morals and ideals, and with shame, that's when we're going against a societal like ideal or thought process. And so guilt is when we ourselves are making a decision that's against our ideals and our values. Okay, where shame is when you go against a society's values and morals. Okay, so that's a big difference. And I will be talking about shame later. And so this month, though, we are talking about guilt, and I'm going to get into it. What is guilt? When you are disappointed in yourself because you broke your own personal values and morals. Okay. And here are some descriptive words for guilt. There's not many, so I didn't do the intensity scale that I normally do with other emotions, because it's a very short list of like words that we can use for it. And that is remorseful or apologetic or regretful or sorry. Okay. So that's the meaning of guilt. The biological things that we feel when we feel guilt are a hot red face, maybe, nervousness or feeling jittery, or a hard to breathe feeling like you can't catch your breath because you've realized that something negative has occurred because of something you chose, maybe. Okay. So these are the actions of guilt, trying to fix harm done, right? So we're kind of running around trying to see if we can fix whatever was broken. Apologizing to people when you've realized that you've made a decision that it goes against your own morals or values and it's hurt someone. You're going to be apologetic, right? Or you're going to confess to them that this is what happened. Maybe nobody knows that this was your event that took place that you caused, right? So confessing to that situation so that other people can have understanding and can maybe move on from what happened in a hard situation. And then also making amends, so doing things for others to make up for what was done. Okay? What I really want to talk about is, when is guilt justified and when it is not justified, okay? And I think this is a really, really important way for us to truly understand what guilt is and what is Pretty much maybe it's toxic guilt that you're feeling. Or, it's just not a justified feeling. You can have feelings that are not justified in the situation. And we do things like checking the facts in that case. And I've talked about that in many other, Moody Talks. Checking the facts can help us to better understand what feeling we should be feeling in that moment. Because sometimes we don't always feel the emotion that fits it, that's happened. And that can be for various reasons. It can be that, the first emotion is so hard and so difficult to deal with that you jump to a secondary emotion. And sometimes that might be guilt, right? Why do we get guilty for things that we haven't done? There's so many reasons. It's called psychology, right? So, when is guilt justified? Here we go. You purposefully hurt someone emotionally or physically, okay? You go against your own values and make opposing choices to the detriment of yourself or others. So let's say that again. You go against your values and make opposing choices to the detriment of yourself or others. So that's when it's justified. When you've purposefully hurt someone, right? Or you've gone against a decision that you may have made differently, right? Maybe you knew the correct decision, but you didn't want to take that decision. You wanted to do a different one, and we're human. We all do those kinds of things. It's inevitable for us to make decisions we know aren't right for maybe an entire group of people, but it's for ourselves, right? Something like that. It can be very human for us to make opposing decisions against our values because there are other factors involved, right? So these are the two main reasons why we should feel guilt, okay? Why it's justified. When is it not justified? You make decisions based on your values that upset others who want you to do the opposite. So it's kind of like the opposite of this, the justifying. You've made a decision based on your morals and your values, and somebody else is mad that you did that. You do not have to feel guilt for that. You are not the guilty party here, right? You are the person who made a decision based on your own values and what you think is right for that situation. That is when guilt is not justified. Do not feel guilt in these situations. You have no choice in your actions. The situation is out of your control. Okay, so there's no reason to feel guilty if we can't make the decision, right? Somebody else makes the decision. It's completely out of our control. There's absolutely no reason for us to feel guilty about that, right? So, very important. This is the last and I think the most important of all of these non-justified actions. Saying no to others. Okay? This is the biggest one, I think, when it comes to guilt. You have every right to say no. And you have every right to feel good about that decision. When others are angry at you for saying no to them, that's not your problem. You have every right to say no to a situation, to say no to a person, to say no to a relationship, to say no to a job. You don't have to feel guilty if you're making the right choice for yourself. And I think a lot of people automatically get guilty because they say no to someone about something. And I think that's the way you grow up, where there's no boundaries, maybe. When you put boundaries up, and no is a good boundary, people get angry with that. But that doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice. There's no reason to feel guilty for saying no to someone. Okay? So that's it for this week. We got an idea of what guilt is, what guilt is not. We got an idea of how our body reacts, what we want to what we tend to do when we feel guilty, actions that we take, and what is justified guilt. And I think it's really important to reiterate justifiable guilt is when you go against your own values and morals, okay? Or you purposefully go to hurt someone, okay? And non justified is when things are out of your control. You've made a choice based on your values, and you said no. I hope this helps. And I will be reiterating that a lot, the old you can say no thing, because I don't think it's said enough, and everyone deserves to hear it a couple of more times a day. Okay, so have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.